Everyone, thanks very much for joining us today for this webinar about the Community Investment Program grants application process. My name's Maureen James, and I manage the Community Investment Program here at CIRA. And this webinar is for people interested in preparing a grant application for our 2019 funding call, which is open until 2 p.m. on February 28th. A recording of this webinar will be available afterward in a few days through the CIRA website in the same section where you registered to attend today. Also, most of this information is available within our application guidelines online. A few logistical details. Given the large number of people participating in today's webinar, I can't hear you because your line is muted. The presentation itself of this webinar will be about 20 to 25 minutes, followed by question and answer. So please do type your questions in the right-hand panel and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the presentation. If you can't see the control panel to ask questions, please click on the orange arrow to expand it. We will also send you a 3-question survey to fill out afterward to get your feedback on the webinar. Your responses will be anonymous, so we do hope you'll participate. In today's session, we will cover an overview of CIRA and the Community Investment Program, the application timeline, eligibility and funding focus areas, evaluation criteria, how to use the online application system, application tips, and as I said, we'll leave time for Q&A at the end. First, a bit about us. Our organization is CIRA, the Canadian Internet Registration Authority. CIRA is best known for our role managing the .ca domain on behalf of all Canadians, and we currently have more than 2.8 million .ca domains under management. Anyone with a .ca domain can become a member of our organization for free, and we currently have over 15,000 members. While our #1 priority is the safe and secure management of Canada's top-level domain, as a member-based not-for-profit organization ourselves, we also have a much broader goal to strengthen Canada's internet. Our goal is to give back to the community in a measurable way by supporting and investing in initiatives that make Canada's internet stronger, safer, and more accessible for all Canadians. For example, we've developed an internet performance test, which is a quick and easy way to test your internet connection, which is intended to provide data for researchers to better understand and improve the Canadian internet. We've also been supporting the development of local internet exchange points in cities across Canada so that internet service providers, content providers, and major customers can connect their networks to each other locally for better performance and lower costs. And this strengthens the resilience of our domestic infrastructure. And we engage with stakeholders from around the world to develop policy standards and operational solutions related to the cross-border nature of the internet. And of course, there's CIRA's Community Investment Program grants, which launched in 2014, and which is what today's webinar is focused on. The grants program is funded through revenues earned from .ca website registrations and renewals. So let's look at the program timeline. The application period opened on January 15th and closes on February 28th at 2 p.m. We do not accept late applications, and the online application system automatically closes at the deadline. When your application is submitted into the system, CIRA staff review it to ensure it is eligible and complete. All reviews take place as soon as applications are submitted, and we email you if anything is missing or incorrect. Typically, 50% of the applications submitted require some adjustment before they can be accepted, including, for example, missing documentation, sections left blank in the application form, budget revenues and expenses not matching, and other types of incompleteness. So we strongly recommend you submit your application well before the deadline so we can review it and so that you will have time to make any adjustments required before the deadline. Only complete, eligible applications will be forwarded to our Community Investment Committee for review. After the February 28th deadline, the committee reviews eligible applications over a period of about a month. Each application is reviewed independently by multiple committee members. The committee meets towards the end of April to discuss the applications and make their selections. Their recommendation is provided to our board of directors for approval in early May. We then notify all applicants of the outcome of their application by email. If your project is chosen, you will receive a letter from us in May outlining the requirements for receiving the grant. The agreement could take up to a month to complete and sign. We will then make a public funding announcement in mid-June. Successful grant recipients can then begin their projects. So for your planning purposes, in your application, you would consider June your start month for any CIRA funding. Now let's review who's eligible for CIRA grants. Canadian not-for-profits, registered charities, and research institutions, that's universities and colleges, are eligible for funding. We have allocated $1.25 million for grants this year. Individual grants are available up to $100,000, and new this year, one grant is available up to $250,000. Projects are intended to be approximately 1 year in duration. However, we favor projects for which the results can be sustained beyond that initial year. The one project we may grant up to $250,000 will have up to 2 years to implement. Eligible applications are reviewed by the Community Investment Committee, which is comprised of 11 individuals. 4 are CIRA board members, and the other members are leaders in the internet space who are independent of the board and of each other. Over the past 5 years, CIRA has supported 130 projects with a total of $5.45 million. Now let's look at our funding focus areas. CIRA's Community Investment Program aims to build a better online Canada by funding innovative community projects that contribute to a stronger, safer, and more accessible internet for all Canadians. For 2019, we have prioritized 5 funding areas. Infrastructure, and by that we mean developing connectivity services for regional, rural, remote, and/or underserved communities. Access, meaning providing individuals and communities with the ability to connect to the internet. Digital literacy means enhancing Canadians' knowledge and skills to use the internet effectively and safely. Engagement, which covers research and knowledge sharing activities that broaden public understanding and participation in internet policy development, governance, and cybersecurity. And finally, services, where building online apps and platforms that address social, economic, and/or environmental needs is covered. If you have questions about the types of projects eligible in any of the 5 funding areas, you can go to CIRA's website to see examples of past funded projects in each of the areas, which are listed in the application guidelines at the end. We also like to be clear about the types of projects we do not fund, since we don't want applicants spending their time completing applications that are ineligible. So what we don't fund includes projects solely focusing on website development and design, training proposals that provide generic IT training, applications seeking IT equipment for general purpose training programs, requests for sponsorship, general fundraising appeals, ongoing core operations, for example, permanent staff salaries, administrative functions such as firewalls and intranets, etc. Retrospective costs, for example, costs prior to the June project start date. Marketing or research associated with marketing activities, and projects whose main focus is outside of Canada. Last year, we received over 180 applications and funded 28. We can't predict how many applications we will receive this year, but given demand and available funding, In general, we can say that fewer than 20% of the applications we receive can be funded. So now let's look at the criteria by which all applications are evaluated. Alignment is one area. Does the project align with the aim of the Community Investment Program? Our aim is to build a better online Canada by funding innovative community projects that contribute to a stronger, safer, and more accessible internet for all Canadians. Does the project align with the specific funding area being applied to? And does it use an original approach to meeting a community need? Looking at budget, is the budget sufficiently detailed and are the costs reasonable? And does the project appear financially viable? Has the organization made an appropriate financial contribution to the project proportional to the organization's financial strength? This could be your own resources, whether cash or in-kind support, or you could show additional sources of funding support beyond the CIRA contribution. We look at planning and results. Is the project well planned with clearly defined objectives? Are the outcomes clear? How many people will the project reach? Some of the feedback the committee shared in the past was that project outcomes were not clear. Applicants did not clearly explain the results they were hoping to achieve. Therefore, we have provided applicants with 2 additional tools to help you plan and communicate your project outcomes. They are included in the How to Apply section of the Community Investment Program website. They are a logic model for project planning and the measuring results tip sheet. Please clearly articulate the indicators you will use to measure and communicate your results in your project application. And finally, looking at capacity and engagement, does the project team include sufficient leadership, project management experience, and organizational capacity to deliver the activities and outputs? Does the organization have a track record implementing similar projects? And does the project involve a broad set of stakeholders, community, volunteers, and partner organizations? So those are some of the evaluation criteria that the committee will use looking at the applications. Additionally, there are some other considerations that come into play as you complete your application. Applicants are encouraged to partner with other organizations as appropriate to work together on common issues, share expertise, and learnings from the project. So when developing your proposal, check to see whether others have done or are doing similar work and partner with them to reduce duplication and amplify your learnings. Please note, though, that we will only accept an application from the lead organization. Applicants should consider whether their results can be scaled for further impact. And finally, applicants are encouraged to make any digital tools created through the project openly available so that others can learn and benefit. For example, applicants can host their documentation publicly via GitHub or equivalent and openly license their solutions. Based on our experience, some of the main reasons why applicants are not successful include unclear project outcomes. The activities may be described in the application, but the outcomes of the project are less clear. Outcomes are the differences or measurable changes in a community as a result of the project. For example, how many individuals are expected to be reached, and how will this project specifically benefit them? For additional guidance, please see the previously mentioned project planning tool and measuring results tip sheet available from our website. Another reason applications are declined is because of concerns about the project budget. For example, if certain project costs lack detail or are perceived as too high or unnecessary, the project may be ranked lower. Also, the financial request must be proportionate to the size and capacity of your organization, and all in-kind contributions from your organization and others should be reflected. Lack of innovation is another reason that applications may be declined. The project may not reflect adequate innovation or an original approach to meeting a community need. And finally, high demand. We receive hundreds of applications and there are only so many we can fund. In 2018, we received 185 applications and funded 28, so 16%. Now let's look at what you need to apply and what goes into the application. The materials for submission. When you apply, you must submit a completed application form and project budget. In addition, there are other materials required of each applicant that you should have ready. First, you must provide proof of eligibility. Examples of proof can include documentation confirming your charitable status and incorporation, or your not-for-profit incorporation. Academic researchers should provide a letter confirming you are employed by the academic institution. In addition, nonprofit organizations and charities must provide a list of your board of directors with the board members' contact information, including organizations, titles, phone numbers, and emails, and a copy of your most recent audited financial statements. If you do not have audited financial statements, we will accept reviewed statements conducted by an accountant that have been signed by 2 members of your board. Also, a current year operating budget is required. Please ensure that the organizational budget indicates the year, and an operating budget is a compilation of forecasted revenues, less known organizational expenses and expected future costs. The operating budget must cover the next 12 months, and for any projects above $100,000, a 2-year forecasted budget is required. Universities are not required to provide their organizational budgets, but they must provide a resume for the lead researcher. All of this information is to be submitted through our online application system. These materials are checked internally at CIRA for completeness before your application can be moved forward to the Community Investment Committee. As mentioned previously, our experience shows 50% of applications need corrections or additions, often in these documents. So we encourage you to submit well in advance of the February 28th deadline. There's no need to provide additional documentation beyond what is requested in the online application system. The committee will receive and review only the application form and attachments we have requested. You will submit the application itself in our online system. You also can view a copy of the entire application form on our website. Some people use that to draft all of their responses offline in another document before cutting and pasting into the online application system when you are ready. We provide explanations throughout the form to clarify what is being asked of you with each question. Now we'll discuss the online application form. You can access the link to the online application form through the CIRA site in the How to Apply section and the application guidelines. You'll see the direct URL at the bottom of this slide. To get started with the online application system, you need to create a login and a password. Then you can begin your application. You can save partial responses as you go. When you log into the system, you will see all of the tasks you need to complete on the right-hand side. The application form is one task, the budget sheet is one task, and the rest of the attachments required are listed as individual tasks. Also on the right-hand side, you can see that you can add other people, called members, to your application to complete it together. Once you select your organization type within the application form and complete and submit it, only those uploads relevant to your type of organization will appear. For example, if you're applying from a university, you are not required to submit your organizational operating budget and board of directors list. This task is only required for nonprofits and registered charities. You can keep an eye on the green progress bar to track your progress through the application process and submission of required documents. Once you finish all of the relevant tasks, one task remains before your application submission is complete. A representative in your organization with signing authority must complete the authorization form, confirming that they approve the application form and budget. You can add an authorizer to the application as a member, and they will receive an email inviting them to review and approve the application. In some cases, the authorizer and the submission owner may be the same person. The authorizer signs the form using their mouse as a pen. Please note that the application can only be submitted by the submission owner, not the authorizer. Now let's look at submitting your project budget. The project budget sheet is an Excel form that must first be downloaded through the online system, then filled out offline, then saved and re-uploaded into the application system. Here are a few tips for completing the budget form. Total revenues for your project must match total expenses. You can allocate up to 15% of your grant request to project administration costs. Keep copies of estimates if you receive quotes from potential vendors. Please explain how you arrived at certain expense estimates and, for example, show hourly rates or quantities. The financial request from CIRA must be in line with your organization's size and capacity. And ensure you reflect the value of all in-kind contributions within the revenue and expenses section and any other sources of funding you anticipate or have already secured for your project. If your project is selected by the committee, we prepare you for the final report. We provide all successful grant recipients with a final report form that they must complete 90 days after the project grant period ends. The form asks how the project's results compare to what was projected at the beginning. A copy of the final report form is available on our website in HTML format, so you can see in advance the information that will be requested of you. To familiarize yourself with the types of projects we fund, make sure you read about our project grant recipients under the 2019 funding focus areas available in the application guidelines. Another application tip is to please review the application requirements carefully so that you have all the necessary documents ready to upload. We'll emphasize again that we encourage you to submit your application well before the deadline so there are no last-minute delays caused by incorrect or missing information. Emails will automatically be generated as part of the application process from an email address called noreply@fluidreview.com. Please make sure you do the following to receive all of these important emails. Review your daily spam quarantine reports for emails from the system or check your junk email folder. And if you have a system administrator, ask them to add the IP address to your anti-spam monitor. You'll receive a confirmation email once your application has been successfully submitted. If you are unsure whether your application has been properly submitted, you can email us. We hope this webinar has been helpful to you, but please don't hesitate to contact us if you have additional questions. You can email cip@cira.ca with questions about your eligibility and the overall process. Please note that CIRA staff are unable to provide personalized guidance and feedback about the merits and specifics of your proposed project. Please contact Fluid Review directly for any questions regarding technical issues with your application and using the online application system. You can reach the link by clicking Help on the online application system. It appears in the right top corner. Thank you again for your interest in the Community Investment Program. And now we'll take a moment to look at some of the questions that have come in during this presentation. Okay, first question. How do we define generic IT training? There's a possibility to apply for a grant to provide training for digital campaigning skills for nonprofit staff at social change organizations, and wondering if that could be a fit. I think in this case, that could be considered generic IT training, unless perhaps the training would be connecting to activities that are about advocacy around internet issues in Canada. So I think if it's more campaigning skills for different types of issues like environmental issues or human rights issues, that wouldn't fit. However, if it's campaigning around advocacy issues and around internet rights or internet access, that would be a closer fit. Next question, can nonprofits in the first year of operation apply? Certainly, nonprofits in the first year of operation can apply. The committee does look at any financial information you are able to provide. So whether that's your planned budget, you may not have audited financial statements yet, but you will have some kinds of documentation about why you came into being and perhaps activities that you were able to carry out even before you were officially a nonprofit. So any kind of documentation that you can provide within the application form that shows your track record and the strength and possible sustainability of the project that you're proposing would be helpful. So yes, nonprofits in the first year of operation can apply. Our next operating budget is expected to receive board approval in May. Can you please provide some guidance on what we can do to meet the requirement of providing an operation budget for the next 12 months? In this case, I would suggest that you present a provisional budget, whatever information you have currently that is as close as possible to what you're expecting will be the budget for the next 12 months. It's better to give us a sense of that rather than say that you don't have anything to present until May. I would say do your best to estimate that, and you can make a note that this is a provisional budget and that a final budget could be made available in May. I think that's the best bet. If an agency applies for the $250,000 stream, will they be considered for a lower amount if they're not selected for $250,000? In this case, I would say there's two ways of looking at this. I think go ahead for the $250,000 project budget. There is a place on the form to indicate if your project received 25% less funding, how would you go forward with it? What changes would you make? It will not be considered as an under $100,000 project. If you're presenting a $250,000 project, please present that. If you want to present a $100,000 project, please present that. And of course, you can, there is the range between $100,000 and $250,000. It's possible to go above the $100,000, but I think it's better to try to limit it either to the $100,000 project or a $250,000 project. Can we email you our idea to see if it is a good fit before we write the application? We do our best to give basic advice around project ideas. So yes, you can email with the idea. We won't be able to give specific recommendations one way or another, but we can help you interpret the guidelines in relation to your project. And then it will be up to you to decide how you proceed. Next question. If a proposed project makes significant contributions under more than one of the funding categories, is it true that only one category must be selected? You are encouraged to choose the category that best fits your project. Often there may be overlaps, and that's okay. It doesn't make it, we're not in any, we're not deciding projects based on type of category. Like it's not like we have a quota for different types of the funding areas. So please present it under the area that best fits, but you can obviously in the presentation of the project overlap different areas, as that may happen in some cases. Other than selecting that major category, do you have any advice on how best to speak to the other strong aspects of the project that align with the secondary categories? I wouldn't get too hung up on the categories. I do think the richness of your project will come through in the activities description, the outcomes that you're aiming for, and so we can leave it up to the committee who are well-versed in the internet space to be able to assess how the different parts of the project interlink and interweave with each other. So I think it's fine to identify one main category because you have to as part of the process, but it will become clear in the elaboration of your project if it straddles multiple areas. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. It's the quality of the outcomes and the project planning that they'll be looking at most closely. Do you have priority areas in terms of geographical regions of the country? No, nothing hard and fast. We have noticed in past years that certain parts of the country apply to the program more heavily, and so we have promoted this year in trying to reach out to provinces and places that have seen less support to date, but there is no geographic quota at this time. In the services stream, what types of platforms and proposals have not been successful in the past? Well, unfortunately, I'm not in the position to answer that because this is my first year with the program and I haven't seen all of the applications that came that weren't successful. So my best advice would be to familiarize yourself with the ones that have been successful, and those are the types of things that we fund. We have an expansion project that will be finished at the end of 2020 that we would like to apply for in the 100 to 250K range. When would we be expected to report on the impacts of the project, given that people would not be accessing it until the start of 2021? Well, normally it's a 3-month period after the project ends that we expect reporting. I think the reporting will depend on the specifics of the project. Sometimes projects go longer, sometimes impacts are not readily reportable within that time frame, but please identify as closely as possible what you will be able to report on in terms of deliverables and project activities. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that for larger projects over $100,000, there will probably be interim reporting deadlines, so we will be expecting that there will be some kind of updates from the organization that would be getting the larger grant. So there will be different ways that we would be expecting you to be able to show us that progress is being made on the specific activities planned and also towards the outcomes you're looking for. Do you encourage more regionally focused partnerships or nationwide? There is no preference in that area. So however it makes sense for your project is what you should propose. It doesn't have to be Canada-wide. It could be a specific province. It could be places that make sense to work together. So we leave that up to you. Are there any more questions? Let me see. I think we may have covered them all. Let me just check here. Yep, I think we've gotten through all the questions that have been submitted to this moment. Oh, here are some more. Can you provide more detail regarding the proportionality of grant to operating costs? I think this one is specific to what we keep saying, which is that we want the project to be proportional to your organization's ability to operate the project. So there is no specific guideline. If we see that a project is the sole activity, a CIRA funding project is the sole activity of an organization, that will be looked at in a certain way. We will try to understand whether an organization can deliver. If we see that an organization with a budget of $40,000 is applying for a $100,000 project, it will be assessed accordingly. There's no specific guidelines. It will be looked at in the context of the financial information that the organization provides, the track record, how long the organization's been doing what it's doing, those kinds of things. But there's no specific proportionality guidelines. The slides will be provided. That was one question. Yes, the slides will be provided online in the next few days in the format of a YouTube thing in the form of a YouTube show that you can watch. So that's the way the slides will be provided. Next question. For a larger project, are you looking for a 2-year project budget and or an organizational operating budget? Trying to understand how we can provide a 2-year organization operating budget when we create operating budgets 1 year at a time. Yes, I think most organizations do create operating budgets 1 year at a time, but what we're suggesting is that if your project is going to be running for 2 years or of a significant substantive amount, that you would estimate the following budget. And if you're an organization that has been, around for some time, you probably are able to forecast. And again, you could mark it as provisional, obviously, because organizations tend to forecast what the budget may be in a following year, but they won't have it actually finally decided until a board or whatever oversight body you have confirms that. But you could show the second year budget as provisional for now. A question about online services projects. You noted criteria based on how many are reached. Is there a number range, and how specifically is this evaluated in the application stage? There's, again, no hard and fast rule about number reached. I think really what matters is how realistic is the number being reached in relation to the project activity. So we don't want people overestimating who they're going to reach. We would love a realistic amount. We have projects where, hundreds of people are reached. We have projects where hundreds of thousands of people are reached. And each project is evaluated based on its own merits. So there's no specific approach to that. It will depend on the whole mix of projects that comes in and how the committee views them all as a set of projects that they're looking at this year. Any more questions? I think we are through the list of questions that have come in so far. All right then. As I mentioned before, don't hesitate to reach out to us at the email address cip@cira.ca. If you have further questions after you've reviewed the application guidelines and the contents of this webinar, we'd be more than happy to address those questions. And as we do remind you, do try to get your application in well before the February 28th deadline. And at that point, we will be able to give you advice on whether anything's incomplete or whether there are eligibility issues, and be able to then move your application forward more quickly to the Community Investment Committee. Thank you very much for joining us today. Bye-bye.